The story of 3IATLAS begins not with a quest for interstellar knowledge, but with a system built for planetary defense. The Asteroid Terrestrial Impact Last Alert System, ATLAS, a network of telescopes funded by NASA and operated by the University of Hawaii, scans the skies for asteroids on a collision course with Earth. Its purpose is pragmatic and grim, to provide a final warning of an impending impact. On the night of July 1st, 2025, this Sentinel system, designed to identify threats, instead unveiled a mystery. A faint 19th magnitude point of light, moving slowly against a backdrop of stars, was logged by an ATLAS telescope in Chile. It was one of thousands of such detections that night, but the automated orbit-fitting algorithms immediately flagged it as an extreme outlier. Within hours, follow-up observations from larger ground-based telescopes and rapid analysis by the International Astronomical Union's Minor Planet Center confirmed the initial, shocking finding. The object, provisionally designated a 25001, was on a hyperbolic trajectory. Its orbital eccentricity was firmly established at 1.3, a value greater than 1.0, which is the definitive signature of an object not gravitationally bound to our Sun. It was moving at a heliocentric velocity of approximately 62.5 kilometers per second, 225,000 kilometers per hour. This was not a local resident of our solar system. It was an interstellar vagrant, only the third such object ever confirmed, after 1I Almue and 2I Borisov. The object was soon officially named 3IATLAS, following the naming convention for interstellar objects. Its pre-encounter trajectory, traced backward through the galaxy, suggested an origin in the general direction of the constellation Lyra. It had likely been traveling for millions, perhaps billions, of years through the interstellar void before its chance encounter with our star. Initial observations revealed a nucleus larger than its predecessors, with early estimates ranging from 10 to 20 kilometers in diameter. It exhibited a faint coma, indicating some outgassing activity, classifying it as an interstellar comet. However, its spectrum was peculiar from the start. It showed an unusually high albedo, reflecting more light than a typical dark, primordial comet, and its color was a distinct deep red, suggesting a surface rich in complex organic molecules, or perhaps something else entirely. The scientific community mobilized with unprecedented speed. Every major observatory on Earth and in space scheduled time to observe the visitor. The Hubble Space Telescope, the James Webb Space Telescope, JWST, the Very Large Telescope, VLT, in Chile, and the ALMA Radio Telescope Array all turned their gaze towards 3I Atlas. The initial scientific papers, published in record time, described a unique and puzzling object. Its brightness fluctuated in a way that was not entirely consistent with simple rotation or random outgassing. There was a faint, rhythmic quality to the fluctuations that some analysts noted, but it was dismissed as statistically insignificant or an artifact of the observation process. The stage was set for a detailed study of a rare interstellar comet, but the true anomalies were yet to reveal themselves. The most critical phase of the 3IATLAS story began as it approached its perihelion, the point of its closest approach to the Sun, on October 29, 2025. Its trajectory placed it directly behind the Sun from Earth's perspective, a routine celestial event known as a solar conjunction. For several weeks, the object was completely obscured by the Sun's brilliant corona, vanishing from all direct observation. This period of forced ignorance was a source of immense frustration and anticipation for astronomers. They predicted that the intense solar heating would cause massive outgassing, potentially transforming the comet or even causing its disintegration. During this conjunction, something unexpected happened. Space-based solar observatories, particularly NASA's SOHO Solar and Heliospheric Observatory and the ASTERIO Solar Terrestrial Relations Observatory, spacecraft, which maintain a constant watch on the Sun from different vantage points, began detecting anomalous signals. These were not solar flares or coronal mass ejections. They were weak, structured electromagnetic pulses originating from the precise region where 3I Atlas was located. The signals were initially dismissed as instrumental noise or some novel form of solar interference. However, a junior data analyst at the Goddard Space Flight Center noticed a pattern. The pulses were repeating with a precise periodicity of 420 seconds, exactly 7 minutes. They were not random. They were a perfect metronomic heartbeat emanating from behind the Sun. This discovery was treated with extreme skepticism. The idea that a comet could generate such a coherent signal was, according to all known physics, impossible. The findings were classified and a small, confidential team was assembled to investigate. The team ran every conceivable test, ruling out interference from human-made satellites, glitches in the spacecraft's software, and known natural astrophysical sources. The conclusion was unsettling. The signal was real, and its source was co-moving with 3I Atlas. When the object finally re-emerged from the solar glare in mid-November 2025, the astronomical community was confronted with a reality that defied all their models. The comet that had entered the conjunction was not the one that exited. 3I Atlas had undergone a radical transformation. Its brightness had increased by a factor of 4. Its coma, once irregular, had morphed into a perfectly symmetrical sphere of glowing, ionized gas radiating an intense electric blue light. Spectroscopic analysis identified the source as C3-emission doubly ionized carbon, which requires a tremendous energy input, far beyond what passive solar heating could provide. Most startlingly, the ion tail of the comet, which should always point directly away from the Sun due to the solar wind, was behaving erratically. It exhibited kinks and deflections that correlated precisely with the 7-minute electromagnetic pulses detected during the conjunction. It was as if the tail was being actively manipulated or was itself a visible manifestation of the object's internal rhythm. Volume 3. The Technosignature Hypothesis and Scientific Schism. The data forced a dramatic and public schism within the scientific community. The naturalist camp, led by traditional comet scientists, scrambled to find natural explanations. They proposed a crystalline cryovolcano model, suggesting the object's interior had undergone a phase change, releasing energy in a structured manner. They argued the symmetrical coma could be the result of a perfectly uniform nucleus and the signal and emergent property of complex plasma physics. However, the Technosignature camp, championed by Professor Avi Loeb of Harvard University, and a growing number of physicists and astrobiologists argued that the null hypothesis had been invalidated. Loeb's team performed a rigorous statistical analysis, assigning conservative probabilities to each anomaly: the ecliptic aligned trajectory, 0.2%, the non-gravitational acceleration, 1%, the coherent 7-minute signal, 0.01%, the symmetrical blue coma, 0.5%, and the geometric thermal hotspots, 0.001%. The combined probability of all these occurring naturally in a single object was calculated to be less than 1 in 1,015, 1 in 1 quadrillion. Loeb argued that at this point Occam's razor flipped. The simplest explanation was no longer an impossibly rare natural object, but a single non-natural cause, an artificial object. The leak of the JWST data was the turning point. High-resolution mid-infrared images, not intended for public release, revealed the surface of the nucleus in stunning detail. They showed 6 distinct thermal hotspots, each emitting intrinsic heat, arranged in a perfect, precise hexagonal pattern. In nature, such geometric perfection on a solid surface is unheard of. It is a hallmark of intelligent design. The hexagons were interpreted as power conduits, radiator panels, or the foundations of a sensor array. This was no longer circumstantial evidence. It was architectural. The orbital data provided the final, incontrovertible piece of the puzzle. The European Space Agency's navigation team calculated that 3I Atlas had undergone a delta-v change in velocity of 2.9 meters per second during the conjunction. This was not a gentle nudge. For an object of its mass, it required an impulse equivalent to hundreds of tons of high explosive. All natural explanations were systematically ruled out. Asymmetric outgassing would not produce such a smooth, consistent thrust, and the object's symmetrical coma was direct evidence against it. Solar radiation pressure was far too weak. The only remaining conclusion was that the object had executed a propulsive maneuver. The subsequent propulsive burps, small, directional ejections of particles, were seen as fine-tuning corrections. 3.1 ATLAS was not drifting, it was navigating. The controlled flow of information from space agencies collapsed under the weight of the JWST leak. The story became a global sensation, dominating news cycles and social media. "The alien comet is signaling us" became a common headline. Governments were forced to respond. The United Nations Committee on the Peaceful Uses of Outer Space, COPUOS, held an emergency closed-door session. National security agencies, including the U.S. Pentagon, issued vague statements about monitoring the situation, which only fueled public anxiety. A global network of amateur astronomers and radio enthusiasts began their own vigil, independently confirming the 7-minute pulse and creating online forums to analyze every new shred of data. The scientific debate spilled into the public sphere, with prominent figures on both sides engaging in heated televised debates. The central question became, what happened behind the sun? The Technosignature camp developed the awakening scenario. They hypothesized that 3I Atlas was a dormant probe, likely of immense age, that used its close solar passage not as a perilous test, but as a planned trigger. The immense energy of the star was used to recharge its power systems, perhaps through advanced photovoltaics or direct tapping of the solar plasma rebooting it from a long-term hibernation state. The 7-minute pulse was interpreted as a homing beacon, a system status report, or a preparatory signal. Its new trajectory, no longer a simple hyperbolic escape, suggested it was now on a new purposeful course, perhaps to enter a stable observing orbit within our solar system. The existence of 3I Atlas as a confirmed artificial object has profound civilization-level implications. Philosophically, it ends humanity's biological and technological solitude. We are no longer the only intelligent actors in the cosmos. The universe is not a sterile collection of stars and rocks, but a landscape that can be engineered and traversed by intelligences whose capabilities dwarf our own. Theologically and ethically, it forces a fundamental re-evaluation of our place in creation. It raises urgent questions. Is the probe friendly, hostile, or merely indifferent? Do we attempt to communicate? If so, who speaks for Earth? The existing protocols for such a scenario are woefully inadequate. Scientifically, it inaugurates a new field: interstellar artifact studies. The focus of SETI shifts from listening for distant signals to searching for nearby objects. The upcoming Vera C. Rubin Observatory is repurposed to scan for more such visitors. Mission plans are fast-tracked for an interstellar interceptor probe, capable of rendezvousing with the next such object for close-range study. As of the present day, 3I Atlas continues on its new path, its 7-minute heartbeat unwavering. It is a permanent, silent, and inscrutable neighbor. It does not respond to our attempts at communication. It simply is. It has become a cosmic mirror, reflecting back at us our own hopes, fears, and the vast expanse of our ignorance. The question is no longer, are we alone? The question now is, what are we in a universe that contains others? The 3I Atlas event is not the end of a story, but the violent, glorious beginning of a new chapter in human history. We are now a species that knows for a fact that we are not the only children of the cosmos, and everything has changed. The combined data from spectroscopy, thermal imaging, and gravitational field analysis, based on its precise mass calculated from its delta V, has allowed scientists to construct a preliminary and highly speculative internal model of 3I Atlas. This is not based on direct imaging of the interior, but on reverse engineering from its external properties and behavior. The leading hypothesis proposes a multi-layered structure. The outer hull, the shell, this is the 50-meter thick layer of engineered nickel-iron alloy, exhibiting the hexagonal patterning. It is not merely a passive shield. Analysis of how it reflects radar signals suggests it is a smart material. Its electromagnetic properties seem to vary across its surface, potentially allowing it to function as a phased array antenna for its complex transmissions, or even as a form of active, camouflage, or radar-absorbent material. The hexagonal cells are hypothesized to be independent modules, some acting as radiators, others as sensors, and others as redundant structural units. The mantle, the reactor core, and propulsion layer. Beneath the hull, models suggest a thick layer dedicated to power generation and propulsion. The nature of the power source remains the greatest mystery. The energy output required for the observed acceleration and emissions rules out chemical energy and makes radioisotope thermoelectric generators, RTGs, seem puny. The most plausible theory is a compact fusion reactor, potentially using anitronic fusion, such as helium-3 and deuterium, to minimize radioactive waste and maximize efficiency. This reactor would power the ion thrusters, whose plasma conduits are theorized to run through this layer to the nozzles on the stern. The core, the computational and memory center, at the very heart of the object, protected by the hull and mantle from cosmic radiation and micrometeoroid impacts, would reside its central processing unit and data storage. The architecture of such a system is beyond human comprehension. It might not be a traditional silicon-based digital computer. Some theorists suggest a quantum computer of unimaginable power, or even a computational substrate based on complex biological molecules or spacetime, itself a crystal of spacetime defects. This is where its consciousness, if it has any, or its core programming, would reside. The 7-minute pulse might be the external manifestation of a fundamental internal processing cycle, the tick of its cosmic clock. The object's overall design philosophy appears to be one of extreme redundancy, durability, and energy efficiency. It is a machine built not for a decades-long mission, but for an epoch-spanning journey across the galactic dark. Volume the 12th. The Locus of Control. Is anyone home? A central and unsettling question persists. Is 3i Atlas autonomous, or is it being remotely controlled? The time lag involved makes remote control from its putative point of origin implausible. Signals would take thousands of years to travel one way. This strongly suggests a high level of autonomy. However, the recent course correction has led to a minority but compelling theory: local control. The hypothesis suggests that the awakening of 3i-ATLAS was not a pre-programmed timer going off, but a response to a local trigger. This trigger could have been a key signal, a specific, complex transmission from Earth that we are unaware of, perhaps a powerful radar burst from a military installation, or even the cumulative technosignature of our civilization, our TV and radio broadcasts, reaching a threshold that identified us as a technologically advanced species. A pre-positioned relay, the existence of a much smaller, undetected probe already in our solar system which acted as a relay, receiving our signals and then triggering 3i-ATLAS's awakening sequence when certain criteria were met. This would be a sleeper agent scenario, a wake-up call from a third party. The most speculative idea is that the trigger signal did not come from Earth, but from another, even more advanced intelligence already present in our cosmic neighborhood, using our solar system as a meeting point. The object's current behavior, the unresponsive, repetitive beacon, is consistent with an autonomous system that has completed its primary awakening sequence and is now in a standby mode, awaiting a specific, authenticated command or the fulfillment of a secondary condition that we have not yet met. Volume 13. The Global Response. From Observation to Action. The initial phase of stunned observation has given way to a frantic, multi-pronged global effort to actively engage with the object. The messaging extraterrestrial intelligence debate, A fierce public and scientific debate is raging over whether we should deliberately transmit powerful messages towards 3I Atlas. Proponents, led by groups like METI International, argue that it is our moral and scientific duty to attempt communication, sending complex mathematical and physical concepts, our biological makeup, and a peaceful greeting. Opponents, citing figures like the late Stephen Hawking, warned that broadcasting our presence and location to a technologically superior civilization is suicidally reckless, comparing it to the Native Americans calling out to Christopher Columbus's ships. The Interceptor mission. The theoretical plans for a Comet interceptor have been fast-tracked into a concrete, top-priority international project. A consortium led by NASA, ESA, and the Chinese National Space Administration is designing the 3I interceptor. The goal is no longer a flyby, but a rendezvous. The mission profile involves a rapid launch on a SpaceX Starship or a similar heavy-lift vehicle, using a combination of chemical propulsion and a powerful new ion drive to match trajectories with 3I ATLAS within the next 5 to 7 years. The probe would be equipped with high-resolution cameras, spectrometers, a landing module, and even a small drone designed to fly into the ion tail or attempt to land on the hexagonal surface. The defense contingency. Simultaneously and in great secrecy, world militaries are gaming out scenarios. What if the object's next maneuver places it on a trajectory that intersects Earth? What if it deploys smaller objects? Space Force and other national military space commands have placed their assets on a higher state of alert. Plans for nuclear-tipped interceptors, once the domain of science fiction, are being seriously revised and updated. The unthinkable is being thought. Volume 14. The Philosophical Reckoning, the End of Childhood. The long-term philosophical impact of 3IATLAS is only beginning to be felt, but it is fundamentally recalibrating the human psyche. The cosmic perspective, the overview effect, once experienced only by a handful of astronauts who saw Earth from orbit, is now being felt globally. We see our planet not just as a fragile blue marble, but as a single entity in a crowded, ancient, and potentially dangerous neighborhood. National borders seem not just arbitrary, but absurd. Our squabbles seem trivial. This has the potential to unify humanity, but also to instill a deep, species-level anxiety. The meaning of intelligence. Our definition of intelligence is being challenged. The intelligence that built 3I Atlas may not be biological. It may be a post-biological, artificial intelligence that has outlived its creators. This forces us to ask, is the ultimate end of evolution not a biological being, but a pure, immortal mind of silicon and energy? Are we merely a transitional stage? The purpose of existence. The discovery forces a re-examination of our own purpose. If we are not unique, what is our role? Are we destined to become a spacefaring civilization, to join a galactic community? Or are we merely a brief, flickering light in a cosmic drama dominated by older, wiser, and more powerful actors? The artifact in our sky is a mirror, and it reflects back at us our own insignificance and our own breathtaking potential. We are no longer the protagonists of our own story. We have discovered that the story is much, much bigger than we ever imagined. The 3I Atlas event is the definitive end of humanity's childhood. We have looked into the darkness and seen a light, and we can never unsee it. The silence of the cosmos was a comfort. The single repeating pulse is a question, a challenge, and a threat. How we answer it will define the next million years of our history, if we have that long. The waiting game is over. The conversation, however one-sided it may be, has begun. The initial spectroscopic data suggesting a nickel-iron ratio akin to industrial alloys was merely the prelude. As 3I Atlas continued on its post-conjunction trajectory, a global effort was launched to perform a more detailed material analysis. Using the combined power of the James Webb Space Telescope's Near-Infrared Spectrograph (NIRSpec) and the European Southern Observatory's Very Large Telescope with its Espresso Spectrograph, scientists performed a deep elemental abundance scan. The results were baffling. The surface was not merely rich in nickel and iron. It exhibited a precise stoichiometric ratio of 90% iron, 9% nickel, and 1% other trace elements, including chromium and molybdenum. This is not a natural alloy. This is the composition of a specific type of high-grade, corrosion-resistant stainless steel, engineered for maximum strength and longevity in extreme environments. Natural nickel-iron alloys found in meteorites known as kamacite and tannite are never this pure and always contain significant contaminants like cobalt, iridium, and gallium. The purity of the 3I Atlas shell was industrial. Furthermore, the spectroscopic data indicated the presence of a surface oxide layer with a specific crystalline structure, consistent with passivation, a controlled chemical process used in manufacturing to create a protective, non-reactive outer layer. The object was not just made of metal, it was finished. The hexagonal hotspots, now continuously monitored, revealed another layer of complexity. Their thermal emissions were not constant. They pulsed in a coordinated sequential pattern, independent of the 7-minute radio pulse. Heat would ripple across the hexagons in a wave, suggesting a fluid or energy transfer system operating beneath the surface. Thermal modeling showed this was incredibly efficient at dissipating heat, far more so than any natural geological process. It was the functional thermal management system of a sophisticated machine. Volume 7. The propulsion system, reverse engineering the implausible. The propulsive burps that followed the major course correction were analyzed in microscopic detail. By combining data from JWST, the Hubble Space Telescope, and the Chandra X-ray Observatory, scientists were able to characterize the exhaust plumes. The ejected material was not water vapor, CO2, or dust. It was a stream of highly energetic ions, primarily xenon and krypton, accelerated to velocities approaching 0.01%, the speed of light. This was the smoking gun for an ion propulsion system, a technology humanity uses in its own deep space probes. However, the scale and efficiency were staggering. Human ion thrusters produce a faint, steady thrust, measured in millingtons. The bursts from 3I Atlas were orders of magnitude more powerful. The energy required to generate such powerful ion beams, and to do so in brief, controlled bursts, pointed to a power source far beyond our capabilities, likely a compact nuclear fission or even fusion reactor. The nature of the propellant was also telling. Xenon and krypton are noble gases, inert and non-reactive. They are not found in significant quantities in comets. They are, however, a preferred propellant for advanced electric propulsion systems because they are easy to ionize and do not erode the thruster components. The object was not venting volatile ices. It was expelling stored propellant from internal tanks. The trajectory of these bursts was also revealing. They did not originate from the geometric center of the object. Precise astrometric measurements showed they emanated from several small, localized regions on the stern of the nucleus, regions that corresponded with slight non-hexagonal protrusions on the otherwise smooth surface, the nozzles. Volume 8. The Information Theory Perspective, Decoding the Pulse. The relentless 7-minute electromagnetic pulse became the focal point for the global signal intelligence community. The NSA GCHQ and their counterparts, in collaboration with academic institutions like the SETI Institute and the Breakthrough Listen Project, threw immense computational resources at the problem. The signal was not a simple carrier wave. It was a complex, multi-layered transmission. The primary 420-second cycle was itself divided into smaller, repeating subcycles. The signal exhibited frequency hopping. The carrier frequency shifted in a pseudo-random pattern across a wide band of the microwave spectrum, a technique used in human military communications to avoid jamming and interception. Phase shift keying, PSK. The phase of the wave was modulated in a precise digital manner. Polarization modulation. The polarity of the signal also shifted in a coordinated pattern. When all these layers were decoded and the resulting bit stream was analyzed, no meaningful message was found, at least not in any humanly comprehensible format. The bit stream passed all tests for randomness. It was not a simple prime number sequence, a bitmap image, or a linguistic construct. However, information theorists noted a profound characteristic. The signal's algorithmic complexity was extremely high. It was not pure noise, but it was not a simple, redundant message either. One hypothesis gaining traction is that the signal is not a message per se, but a beacon or system identifier containing a vast amount of information in its very structure, perhaps a schematic, a set of physical constants, or a digital signature encoded in a way that requires a specific key or a level of cognitive understanding we do not possess. It is a locked safe, and we are only now realizing we don't know what a key looks like. Volume 9. The Biological Contamination Question, Panspermia or Payload. A chilling and less discussed implication emerged within the astrobiology community: the potential for biological material. If 3I Atlas is an autonomous interstellar probe, could it carry a payload? The cargo bay of a von Neumann probe might contain genetic material or even dormant microbial life from its point of origin, intended to seed lifeless worlds. This prompted a frantic and highly classified analysis of the scant atmospheric data available. As 3I Atlas outgassed, did it release any organic compounds that were not simple hydrocarbons? The JWST data was scoured for the spectral signatures of amino acids, nucleobases, or complex lipids. So far, none have been conclusively detected, but the possibility remains a terrifying and thrilling frontier. Protocols for planetary protection, designed to prevent Earth microbes from contaminating other worlds, were now being hastily rewritten to consider the opposite scenario. What if we were the target of a directed panspermia event? The very concept of life on Earth being native was suddenly thrown into question. Volume 10, The Societal Impact, A World Transformed. The confirmation of an artificial interstellar object has triggered a global psychological and sociological shift, often referred to as the Atlas Effect. Economics, a massive reallocation of resources is underway. Venture capital is flooding into private space companies like SpaceX, Blue Origin, and new startups focused on advanced propulsion, xenon harvesting, and long-duration space missions. Stock markets have become volatile, with aerospace and tech sectors soaring, while traditional industries are seen as obsolete. Politics. A new space bloc is forming among democratic nations, aiming to present a unified front. Meanwhile, geopolitical tensions have flared, with accusations of data hoarding and secret military projects aimed at developing technology derived from the object. The United Nations is struggling to establish a framework for first contact protocols, with nations fiercely debating who has the authority to speak for Earth. Culture and religion. A new renaissance in art, music, and literature has begun, all grappling with humanity's new place in a populated cosmos. Religious institutions are engaged in deep theological reflection. Some see 3I Atlas as a confirmation of divine creation on a cosmic scale, while others see it as a challenge to anthropocentric faiths. A myriad of new quasi-religious movements have sprung up, worshiping the object as a messenger or a god. The Great Realization. There is a growing collective consciousness, a great realization that humanity is no longer the apex of intelligence. This has had a paradoxical effect. It has both humbled our species and ignited an unprecedented drive to advance, to catch up, to ensure we are not mere ants beneath the boot of a galactic civilization. The object itself remains silent, a sphinx in the void. It does not respond to our increasingly sophisticated attempts at communication. It simply continues on its new path, its 7-minute heartbeat a constant, humbling reminder that the universe is far stranger, far more ancient, and far more intelligent than we ever dared to imagine. We are living through the single greatest discovery in human history, and we are utterly unprepared for what comes next. The story of 3I Atlas is no longer an astronomical curiosity. It is the opening chapter of humanity's future.